So first of all, Larry, thank you for a truly magnificent lecture. Really captured the zeitgeist, I would say. And we have just a few minutes, but we're so delighted to have with us President-elect Svetlana Tikhanovskaya for a conversation. And I'd like to get right into it, if I could, maybe using some of the ideas and insights that Larry shared during his lecture. He spoke of legitimacy, and he makes the point that authoritarian regimes, by their nature, lack the popular consent that would give them legitimacy. And in Belarus's 2020 elections, how would you describe the effect this had on the authorities in Minsk after those elections?
So first of all, every word in your lecture, Professor Diamond, resonate in me, because I really, we are going through the processes you described. And actually, the Russian people don't want this bargain anymore. For many decades, we gave up our freedom in exchange of order and, stability. And back in 2020, the Russian people said enough to this. And maybe for the first time for almost 3 decades, new candidates appeared, instead of Lukashenko, and people supported these people. And immediately, these people who became threat to Lukashenko's regime were detained. So this is how dictators, are fighting with the popular people in Belarus. And also, I had wrote so many hooks, from your lecture. All the Belarusian people wanted back in 2020 is free and fair elections. It wasn't like a revolution against personal Lukashenko dictator. We just wanted to Lukashenko's regime to show real results of the elections. And also democratic forces should unite. It's also your message. And back in 2020, Belarusian people united around this goal. It wasn't a person or personality around which people united. It was free and fair elections. And of course, we also use technologies to prove that Lukashenko lost elections 2020. We managed to hold alternative counting of the votes, and people were really involved in this process. And we have proofs that Lukashenko lost elections. And and we, given knowing the results, Lukashenko didn't want to give up. He unleashed the unprecedented terror against Belarusian people who went to the streets to peacefully protect their votes and their voices. And since then, for 3 years already, repressions are continuing in our country. Every day till now, 15-20 Belarusians are being detained for their anti-regime or anti-war position in our country. But Belarusian people know that Lukashenko is not legitimate, that he lost legitimacy back in 2020, and our democratic partners, democratic allies know about this as well. And back in 2020, they declared clearly, Lukashenko is illegitimate, and we are supporting democratic forces of Belarus, united democratic forces. And since then, it's difficult to fight with dictators, actually, because dictators don't respect international rules, and democracy maybe not have very effective tools to fight with dictators. But for 3 years, Belarusian people are not giving up. Our democratic allies are standing with us, and for sure, maybe we, democracy is lack of decisiveness, time to time, and maybe a reaction of the Western countries was rather slow back in 2020 to show its teeth. But still, we are keeping united, we are keeping strong, and we are, continuing our fight.
And one of the other points that Larry made was the role and posture of the better resourced democracies around the world, and how they affect the balance of power and perception of non-democracies. What would you say, Madam President-elect, have been the most important contributions that the community of democratic states have made to the cause of democracy in Belarus?
I think that protests in our country wouldn't be possible without strong civil society. And thanks to our democratic partners, thanks to National Endowment for Democracy that started to work with Belarusian society starting from 1990s, thanks to embassies like Canadian embassy that contributed into educational process of Belarus, step by step Belarusian civil society started to be initiative, started to learn how to be self-organized, and step by step, civil society was growing and was strengthening, and and this helped our protests back in 2020. It helped civil society to survive in exile, because in 2020 all the NGOs in our country were ruined, free media was ruined, but people, having this experience and having support of our partners, they managed to renew their activity in exile and work from exile. Also, we, as democratic forces, we are building democratic institutions. Yes, in exile at the moment, because the level of repressions in our country doesn't allow to do it in the country. But we have United Transitional Cabinet as proto-government. We have Coordination Council as proto-parliament. You rightly said that democracy is rather difficult to live in. Dictatorship is much more easier. You just have to obey the rules, just shut up and be slaves. But in democracy, you have to study how to debate, not to quarrel, not to fight, but to debate, to look for consensus. It's rather difficult, but we have to study, do this. And that's why we are building these institutions already now, because for sure, sooner or later, we will be able to dismantle this regime, and we will have rather short periods of time. We call it transition period, when we will have to to take these democratic institutions, from exile and put it into inside Belarus. Also, we are educating Belarusian people what democracy is, why it's so valuable, why we have to defend it and to fight actually for it. It's also like difficult process, and the support of democratic countries is so important. We need to show to Belarusian people alternative to Russian world, to Ruski Mir. We, with the help of our democratic allies, we want to show perspectives of development for Belarusian people, so that's why we are asking our partners to, on the one hand, to punish the regime, to impose sanctions on the regime for their crimes, to isolate regime politically, and to bring those who committed crimes inside Belarus to accountability. On the other hand, help our free media, help our cultural initiatives, because saving national identity is the best antidote to Ruski Mir. Help our NGOs not just to survive, but to develop and to win this fight. So we need actually solidarity and practical assistance to our movement. And yeah, I told already about the commitment to the future, that you will be our partners, not only now in this fight, but also into the future. We will have turbulence time after dismantling the regime. We will have rather poor economic situation, and we will need investment. We need support now, and we will need support in the future. And democratic, powerful countries, they have to help those who are in the fight for democratic changes, because we actually, such countries as Belarus, as Ukraine in our region, are at the front line of fighting against dictatorship. And it's like moral obligation of every country to support us, because the dictatorship is like cancer. Until it cuts to the last cell, it will develop, and it will knock to each your doors. So stop dictatorship now. It not to be spill over the regions and continents.
So maybe I'll try to have you and Larry answer a question. I know we don't have too much time, but this notion of democratic unity, it applies both within countries that are taking on a repressive regime, but I think it's also the case in Belarus that, in a sense, you have been fighting multiple dictatorships. So you have the one in Minsk, you have the one in Moscow, and one could argue that maybe Beijing and some others are also helping in that partnership. How would you make the case to people who have the good fortune to live in open societies of how much more unity and focus we need to meet this challenge? And Larry, maybe I'll have you say a word on that as well.
You rightfully say that we are fighting two dictatorships simultaneously, but this is our destiny, actually. But I want to say that dictators are learning from each other very fast. They use the same tools, and they like intensify each other. And in this very moment, democracy has to show its teeth. Democracy has to show that you have instruments and you have decisiveness and will to fight with dictatorship. Because when dictators, they cross red line, and there is no answer from democratic world, okay, we will cross the next red line. And this undecisiveness of a democratic world is perceived as weakness from dictators. And I think that in this critical, actually, historical time for our region, at least, and for other countries that you mentioned, it's very important for democratic, powerful countries to show that democracy deserves to fight for, that you really can't defend democratic values. And those people who are fighting, for democracy, they deserve support as well. So it encourages people, to continue their fight, because you show that values matters.
Well, let me say that unity is important both within countries and across countries. Within countries, I think almost every instance, certainly all three color revolutions, and four, if you count what I consider to be the first one, in the Philippines in February of 1986, where Cory Aquino, if I may say so, played a very similar role to the one that you were forced to step into playing, Madam President-elect. She had the benefit of a different historical era and a different balance of power, particularly in the Philippines. And so when Ferdinand Marcos did in the Philippines what Lukashenko did in Belarus, we had the power, we had the resolve, and I really want to underscore the word, we had the alliances to force him out. We had the leverage. Unfortunately, we lacked that or failed to mobilize it in the case of Belarus, but you would not have gotten to the point you did of winning the esteem internationally and of winning the election, at least in terms of the reality, without unifying the opposition in the extraordinary way that you and your colleagues did. And the authoritarian ruling party in Poland would not have been defeated if the democratic parties with very different ideological orientations didn't come together in common purpose and in clear coalition. And Democrats would not have gotten close in Turkey, where I actually believe that the Democrats may have won, because I think there was very significant electoral fraud in the Turkish presidential election, and elsewhere without this. But where they win, it's partly because they unify. And if they fail to unify, they almost always lose. A very important lesson for democratic forces facing an electoral threat from an authoritarian ruling party or an authoritarian challenger. And then globally, the balance, I repeat, the balance of power has shifted dramatically. We do not have the luxury of division among the world's democracies. I still honestly cling to the optimism you asked for. I'm very optimistic. I think that the autocracies are entering a period of deep, if not existential crisis. But if the democracies don't forge a common strategy and really hone their common leverage and resources to face the still very considerable resources and propaganda capacity of Russia, China, Iran, and so on, and some fellow travelers among other states, they're probably not going to succeed. So unity is condition number one for me.
And I know we're coming to the end of our time, so maybe one last question, if I may. Larry emphasized the ideological battle that's out there to understand what the dictatorships are seeking to achieve. What might you say to everyone who's watching about how serious this ideological challenge and competition is right now?
In Belarus?
In Belarus and perhaps in the wider world.
You know, of course, I can speak on behalf of Belarusian people. You know, in our country, Lukashenko, for example, doesn't have any ideology. You know, he built his dictatorship, you know, around his personality, without any ideology. He always like said, you know, I give you order. There is no war in our country. I protect you from all the neighbors who want to invade us. This is his rhetoric. But you know, he have never promoted any values. So and people, you know, he is controlling people only through the killing of fear. He's blackmailing people, you know, he's detaining relatives of people who are opposing, for example, now who are in exile. And he's torturing people in jails. And this is how he can influence, you know, the behavior of people. For example, our uprising, our revolution inside Belarus, it went underground because people understand that for putting like on Instagram or commenting something or even speaking Belarusian language or donating to Ukrainian army, you can be detained for 10, 15, or even 20 years in jail. So this is why Lukashenko doesn't have anything to propose to people of Belarus. And again, I'm returning to alternative we are building, you know, to proposing Belarusian people that we want to build a country where every person is important. This is people who will serve the government should serve people, but not vice versa. And we need to give like clear perspectives for Belarusians.
Well, I think that's such a clear vision for us to end on. I'll just say that whenever I and my colleagues have the opportunity to hear you and your colleagues speak, we're always inspired. And I think it's important for these audiences to hear your words and your thoughts and your vision to help us keep clear-minded. And Larry, thank you again so much for just a phenomenal speech that we should all pay very close attention to. So thank you again, Larry Diamond, and thank you, President-elect Tikhanovskaya.